Yes, I think we'll start before Chairman McCall. You may have more luck than I do, Congresswoman. How are you? President Dean?
Yes.
No, we can start.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it a thing. So you're here, and then, so here you go. Here's your procedural remarks, and then here's your.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ready? Questions?
Yeah.
All good.
Okay, now who was that? Huh? Keith Sell. Oh, so far. Okay, and then, okay, now, and I need their names, Chandler, Keith Sell, and the other, the brand new one. South Carolina. Okay, and the states.
Get your names. Jim Baird is Indiana. Okay.
Is it Sarah?
Sarah Jacobs.
Oh, God. Okay, Sarah Jacobs.
Okay, California.
Indiana.
Keith Self. Texas.
What's his first name?
Chairman McCall is here, so I'm going to probably have to.
What's Amos' first name?
It's a game, AMO, and he's from Rhode Island. Yep, there you go.
Good?
Stuff.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
With the new
Okay.
Well, if he wants them.
Yep.
So as soon as he gets
Okay.
Keith's office from where?
Texas. So the only time those other members, only you, Kathy, and McCall will speak for an opener, okay? They're only going to speak for questions, the other members.
Okay.
And the idea is to go in order of seniority. I'm going to let the staff help
Give
you
me,
with
they
that,
just,
okay?
they'll give me a list, okay?
Do you mind?
Now, hey, I'll call on,
I can sit
hey,
right
hey,
here.
Alex, yes, hey. Hey,
Yeah, can you switch in with us? I'm just gonna
Alex.
sit right here,
No,
and
no,
I'm gonna
please.
tell you who's.
No, hey, that was on, please.
Meeks is coming too, so
Oh, my God.
people who are speaking will be you, McCall, Command.
Okay, so I recognize, okay, I recognize Chairman McCall, so Gabriella
So
said to
you'll
do that.
speak, and then you'll speak, and then Miss Manning, and then Mr. McCall.
Okay, okay, please.
Okay.
Alex, right here.
They're not. So that was all. I'll do this for you, sir. Yeah. Yes.
So Greg meets to speak after Mike, right?
Yeah.
So it'll go back and forth. So you, Manning, McCall, Meeks.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to step away from you.
Hey, Alex, this could be fun for you now, because Brad,
Great.
okay, Brad Schneider, Brad,
I will
Illinois.
let you know the order
Okay,
in
Brad.
which to recognize members, but we're
yeah.
going to start with we're going to start with these four,
Good,
and then
good.
and then we'll move into questioning. Okay, so the four of you are going to give opening statements, and then we'll do questions.
Perfect. Hey, but keep punching me.
I will. I got you. I'll keep you on track, sir. Yes, the family's well. No one else is giving openers besides the four.
He's good.
Trying to keep my head above water.
Sir, we can start whenever you're ready.
I think,
Okay,
yeah,
I was gonna-
I think since the chairman and the ranking member are here, and I know Chairman McCall has to leave.
I was gonna wait for them to be seated now, shouldn't I?
I think you can
No, I think you should
ask
ask them
be
to
seated.
people to take their seats. I'm happy to go tell
Ask the
Chairman
chairman,
McCall.
Good. You've got your opening statement, and then then we'll
Okay.
go. Here, wait. Let me just grab this and write in who's gonna go
Hey,
next.
long time no see, man.
Okay, you ready? You ready? Okay. Me, you, Mike, Greg, then we. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of civilization, I'm grateful to welcome you today to today's roundtable. I want to thank the families, the very brave and courageous families who are with us today to discuss the hostages that have been kidnapped by Hamas, the puppets of Iran. And to show how important this hearing is, I'm just very grateful that as chairman of the Middle East Subcommittee, I have the opportunity to chair the committee, but we actually are really fortunate to have the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mike McCall, and we have the ranking member, Greg Meeks, Texas Republican, Greg Meeks, Democrat, New York. And then it's also significant that we actually have a congressmember brand new and all the way from Rhode Island. So Gabe Amo, thank you for being here. And so we're very fortunate to have so many people. And then before I begin, I also want to let everyone know that we've got virtually a full house of members of Congress, very distinguished people like Keith Self from New York, Texas. But we also have, I'm grateful, Congresswoman Eliana Ross-Lehtinen, who is visiting. She is the former chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And Congresswoman Lehtinen, thank you for being here. And she's, she being a Cuban American herself, she understands the challenges of freedom and never to give up. With that in mind, I will recognize myself for an opening statement, and then we'll have a statement by Congresswoman Kathy Manning of North Carolina, and then our chairman, Mike McCall, will make an opening statement, and then we will proceed with Congressman Greg Meeks, and then we will proceed further. With that, ladies and gentlemen and friends of Israel, thank you for joining us today for this sobering conversation following the horrific attack, invasion by the puppets of Iran, the Hamas terrorists, on October 7th. We appreciate the host families of Abigail Eden, Itali Kin, and Omar Noota and Eden Alexander, who were taken hostage, being kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. First, we're overjoyed that the 4-year-old Abigail Eden, whose parents were mercilessly murdered by the Hamas terrorists, has been released. We thank the family members of these hostages who are here today to speak about the nightmare their families are enduring as they fight for the release of their loved ones. On October 7th, the world witnessed and Israel experienced the deadliest mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. Iranian puppet Hamas terrorists not only killed Israeli civilians, but Americans and citizens from Ireland to Germany to Russia to Thailand to Argentina have been murdered or kidnapped. Hamas terrorists murdered over 1,200 Israelis in cold blood and kidnapped over 240 innocent people, holding them as hostages under inhumane and barbaric conditions. This hatred is not just shocking. Hamas outlined their plans in a 1988 covenant stating their intentions for the world, and that is, quote, "The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews. When the Jews hide behind stones and trees, the stones and trees will say, 'O Muslims, O Abdullah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him.'" End of quote. It's so tragic that, indeed, Hamas made it perfectly clear what they intend to do, and it's a declaration of genocide against people of Jewish heritage. We must work tirelessly to bring home every hostage, freeing them from the murderous terrorists who kidnapped them. We know that the civilian deaths in Gaza are human shields, with Iranian puppet Hamas terrorists solely responsible for the tragic deaths in Gaza today. Hamas terrorist puppets of the Iranian regime seek to break the spirits of those they seek to destroy, but they will not succeed. We are united in our mission to free all hostages from captivity by the Hamas puppets of the regime in Tehran. Your presence here today sends a strong message of unity and unbreakable spirits. I visited with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem in August to reassure the people of Israel of American support in face of the Iranian regime. Today, we are joined by Ronen and Nora Neotra, the parents of the hostage Omar Neotra, an Israeli Defense Force soldier being held hostage by Hamas. Omar is 22 years old, from Plainview, New York. As a dual Israeli-U.S. citizen, he is serving in the IDF when he was captured. Omar had deferred his admission to Binghamton University in New York to serve in the IDF. We're also joined by Ruby Ken, the father of Itai Ken, who is also an IDF soldier who has been held hostage by Hamas. Itai was a 19-year-old American citizen who was kidnapped from his base next to the Nakela near the border of Gaza on October 7th. Itai was on active duty as part of a tank unit when he was kidnapped by Hamas. Ruby, sadly, has not received the proof of life for his son, Itai, and the International Red Cross is not able to provide medical attention to him. And for those of you who have members in the military, my oldest son served in Iraq, my second served in Baghdad as a Navy doctor, my third son served in Egypt with Bright Star, my fourth son served for a year in Afghanistan, so I especially identify the horror of what you're addressing. Finally, we're joined by Liz Hirsch Naftali, the great aunt of 4-year-old Abigail Eden, who was fortunately released by Hamas on Sunday, November 26th. Liz was in Israel on October 7th when Abigail was brutally kidnapped by Hamas after they mercilessly murdered both of her parents on October 7th in their home at the Kfar Island kibbutz. Abigail was in her father's arms when he was shot and killed by the Hamas terrorist and taken hostage at just 3 years old of age. She turned 4 while in terrorist captivity. Again, I, along with the American people, share in our gratitude that your grandniece was released over the weekend after 50 days of captivity, and we are grateful that she is once again with the family. We will not stop, and again, joined by the leadership of the Foreign Affairs Committee, until the remaining hostages, including an estimated 9 Americans, have been released. We appreciate the opportunity to hear your stories as we work together in support of your families and to fight for the release of your loved ones and all who are being held by the Iranian puppets of Hamas. With that, I now proceed and recognize Congresswoman Kathy Manning from North Carolina.
Thank you to my dear friend, Chairman Joe Wilson, for organizing this roundtable, and thank you to the families for being here. We can only imagine what you're going through, but we are so deeply grateful that you have come time and time again to share your stories with us. On October 7th, we woke in horror to Hamas's brutal and despicable terrorist attacks, firing rockets at innocent civilians, storming the border by air, land, and sea, invading Israel with the specific purpose of killing civilians and capturing civilians. They went house to house, murdering babies, executing parents in front of their children, massacring more than 250 young people at a music festival. And in addition to the 1,200 people that Hamas killed that day, they took an estimated 240 innocent civilians hostage in Gaza, including elderly women, children, and babies. Like so many of my colleagues, I have spent the past 6 weeks meeting with the families of the hostages. People like the Siegel family from my state of North Carolina, whose relatives Keith and Aviva were kidnapped from kibbutz Kfar Aza, and fortunately, Aviva was released this weekend, but Keith is still captive. And of course, I've met with each of you, with Hagit and Ruby Chen, with Ronan and Orna Nutra, Yael and Adi Alexander, Liz Hirsch Naftali, and Noah Naftali. We're so grateful for you being here. I feel like you're all my extended family by now. I think about your loved ones every day, and I talk about them as often as I can, because just like you, I want to make sure that they are not forgotten with everything else that's going on in this world. And just like the stories of Holocaust survivors, each one of your stories is unique. Each story is heartbreaking because each of the hostages have loving family members whose lives have been torn apart, who are living with the agony of not knowing what has become of their loved ones. Are they okay? Are they healthy? Are they injured? Are they alive? And will you ever see them again? I have heard stories that have brought me to tears, stories that haunt my dreams, that should make all of us redouble our efforts to bring those hostages home. The past few days have seen significant breakthroughs in attempts to bring the hostages held by Hamas home to their families. And I applaud the efforts of the administration, of Israel, the regional partners, who have worked to ensure that the agreed upon hostages are released, but there is much more work to be done. And Liz, we're so happy that Abigail is brought home, but I just want to say to those of you who have been happy with the other hostage families, you've watched their families reunited, I know how hard it must be for you to wait and watch, knowing that your loved ones are still in places unknown and conditions unknown, and we pray for you, and we'll be waiting to greet you with them someday in the future. Just yesterday, I was proud to help lead the debate on the House floor on a bipartisan resolution that we passed unanimously, demanding the release of the hostages. Today is an important opportunity for all our members to hear these stories and to redouble our efforts to do everything we possibly can to push for the remaining hostages, every single one of them, to be released, and for the International Committee of the Red Cross to be admitted to visit the hostages. And countries around the world should join in demanding the immediate release of the remaining hostages. But I just want to mention how outrageous it is that the Red Cross still has not been allowed in to meet with the hostages, and we continue to call for the Red Cross to be allowed to meet with the hostages. So thank you again to the chairman, to the chairman of the subcommittee, to the chairman of the full committee and ranking member. Thank you to all of our colleagues for being here. We look forward to hearing from these families, but most of all, we look forward to bringing all the hostages home.
And thank you very much, Congresswoman Kathy Manning of North Carolina. And this is, you're seeing actual proof of Republicans and Democrats working together, united, on behalf of the people of Israel and on behalf of the kidnapped hostages. We now proceed to the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mike McCall of Texas.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson and Ranking Member Manning. Let me welcome you under such horrific circumstances. We stand united with you as Americans on this committee. We put our partisanship aside. We always say it stops at the water's edge. You know, I can't help but feel the grief having traveled to Israel, but my father was a bombardier in World War II, and he bombed the Nazis. And they destroyed the Nazis. And then we uncovered the death camps. And we always say, never again, never again. And here we are in this century, in this time, with the largest slaughtering of Jews since the Holocaust. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. My father saw it, but I never thought I'd see it. You know, their covenant from the river to the sea, that we will obliterate the state of Israel, really says it all. You know, the Hamas leader, who was a prisoner himself, who was released, said, I will continue to invade and slaughter Jews again and again until we win. Well, the United States is standing up to this. And I will say, I'm proud of this administration for standing with Israel, because we are Americans first. And we need to bring more of our American hostages home. We've only brought one home. You know, I credit the administration, leaders in Congress. I thank you to countries like Qatar, but we have to get our American citizens home into safety. The ranking member and I had the honor to travel to Israel about a week ago, and we met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we saw the horrific Hamas video. Chilling. I've never seen the Prime Minister, who's a very stoic, strong man, driven to tears, watching his own people being killed in such a horrific manner, and the rapes and the beheadings and the slaughter of innocent Jewish people. He will not rest until they are eradicated. Not just for the Jewish people, but for the Palestinians. Because only until we can free them from the Palestinians are the Jewish people going to be free from terrorism. And only until then can we have peace in the Middle East, true peace. And I think that is what the result of this horrific act was. But I will not rest. I know the ranking member will not rest, and members on this committee will not rest until we bring every American back home to the United States. I'm so delighted that Abigail made it out of that hell, and hearing them describe the conditions. And we met when we were there with the brother of Emily Hand, a beautiful 9-year-old girl who was finally released. But we need more. We passed the most bipartisan resolution in the history of the Congress condemning Hamas and standing in support of the state of Israel. More co-sponsors than ever in the history of Congress, which speaks volumes about where Congress is. As you see these Hamas protesters in the streets, know that the American people, by the representatives, support you and support the state of Israel. And I just want to close with the mother who I met with not very long ago, whose son is still in captivity. She said her son was, a translation in Hebrew was the son of light. And she said, you know, Chairman, lightness will defeat the darkness. I know it so. His lightness, our lightness, will defeat this darkness in Gaza, this hell, this darkness of captivity will be ultimately defeated by the light. And that is really what this message is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike McCall. And we now proceed to Ranking Member Greg Meeks of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me associate myself with the remarks of you, Chairman Wilson, of you, Chairman McCall, of you, Vice Ranking Member Manning. Your words, your thoughts are moving, and I think that you speak for all of us. Let me say to the families, because as Mr. McCall have said, I've had the opportunity, whether it was in Israel or recently, anytime I see you, you give me hope. That's why your presence here is so important. I really can't imagine what you're going through. I really can't. I'm a father of three daughters and 3 granddaughters. I can't imagine on a Saturday afternoon, my daughters and my grandkids on a regular day happen to be bright and sunny, going out about their normal business. And then all of a sudden, terrorists come and change their lives forever. The video that Chairman McCall talked about, where we could see some who were taken hostage, how they were taken hostage. That's inhumane. It is unconscionable. But yet, thank you for having the courage to be here today to tell your story. Because it is so important that your story is told. And it is even more important that we don't stop until your loved ones are returned to you. And when they are returned, the story still must be told so that generations yet unborn understands what took place. They have to know the inhumanity and the insaneness of terrorists and terrorism. You can't be human and take, as we've seen, babies, 3 years old. We're glad, and we want to make everybody has to be 3 years old just to think that somebody's going to take a 3-year-old and hold them hostage. Seniors, disabled, mothers, fathers. But you're here. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to hear, because it is so important for every member of Congress to know, every American to know, every human being to know. Because to know and to put ourselves, or to even imagine, which I can't as a father. I just can't. I don't know how you do it, but I thank you for doing it. I really do. Because we got to feel the human touch is what you're providing in your grief and in your hope. Because hope is a part of this also, which, it's easy to lose hope. But you have shown you have not given up hope. And we know that there's been some 81 hostages returned. And as I think Representative Manning said, it's hard for those who have not been. But you continue to give hope to us. And what that does do for members of Congress, it makes it so that we will not relent. We will not stop. We will not forget. We will continue to work. We will put politics aside until your hope becomes a reality of the return of your loved ones. Thank you. Thank you. The United States Congress, the American people, and the world owes you a deep, deep thank you for doing what you do, because you are going to make sure that they are never forgotten and returned home, even in this time of your concern. May God bless each and continue to bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Greg Meeks. And indeed, it's a great honor. And I appreciate so much Chairman McCall naming me as the chairman of the Middle East Subcommittee. And of all the events that I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with, this is the most heartfelt that indeed we've all faced. And you can see it's from the heart and bipartisan, our standing with you, your families, and the people of Israel. And we're grateful for your courage to have as guests here today Ronan and Orna Nutra, Ruby and Hagit Ken, and Liz Hirsch Naftali, all who know firsthand the pain and fear of having a loved one taken by the Iranian puppets of Hamas. We are honored to have them here to share their stories. I also want to welcome the Alexander family, whose son Eden is also being held by Hamas. You are cherished for being here today. Each of you, we would request keep your spoken words to 5 minutes in order to allow for members' questions, and you have a record number of members of Congress who are here who are dedicated to working with you. I now recognize Ronan and Orna Nutra to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your kind words.
Yes, thank you for having us here, and thank you for all of your support, really. We are Ronan and Orna Nutra, New York residents and parents of Omer, who was abducted by Hamas on Saturday, October 7th, and has been held hostage 54 days today. 54 days since the last sign of life. Can you imagine? It truly is unimaginable. Unimaginable that something like the events of October 7th could even take place. Unimaginable that after 54 days, not only is he still held hostage, but that the Red Cross has not been allowed access. Unimaginable that we find comfort in the fact that he was taken hostage and not murdered on that day.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our son, Omer. He's this big 6'2", tall guy, always with a smile on his face. He's a good friend, the kind that brings people together. In some ways, Omer grew up like any other kid on Long Island, crazy about sports, any sport, but especially basketball. Captain of his high school sports teams, regional president of his youth group, a true young leader. He's a dual citizen of both United States and Israel, and we raised him with a deep connection to both of his homelands. After graduating school, although accepted to college, he decided to take a gap year in Israel on a program together with his Israeli peer group. The closer he grew to his new Israeli friends, the more he reflected on his own identity. As a descendant of Holocaust survivors on both sides, both me and my wife, he understood the importance of strong Israel. So he made a decision to volunteer and join his new friends and serve in the IDF to protect the Jewish land. He was drafted as a lone soldier in the Armed Corps, and in his most recent position, he was stationed just on the post on the border with Gaza as a tank commander and as an officer.
We last spoke with Omer on Friday night, October 6th. In our last conversation, he indicated that he was looking forward to a quiet and peaceful weekend after a really stressful month protecting the border. We all know what happened only a few hours later. He was protecting people when he was taken by Hamas. And since this day, our lives have completely turned upside down. We spend every waking hour fighting in his name, speaking on his behalf, in front of communities, with the government, with you, on the media. We're deeply grateful for the support that we've received from the US government, from President Biden, who's committed since day one to bringing the hostages home. There has been some progress this week, but Omer is still not with us. And the clock continues to tick, and not in our favor. There are still 150 hostages in Gaza, deep under the ground in the dark, some badly injured, with no medicine, with little food. So we appreciate your support, but we urge you to press to bring the international community to demand proof of life and other basic humanitarian requirements, and to bring them home as soon as possible. We must do everything to bring them back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronan and Orna. I now recognize Ruby and Hagit Kin.
Thank you for having us today. We are here representing our son, Itai Chen, 19. But we also are representing 160 hostages. And the problem that we have, Chairman, time is running out. I'd like to recognize amongst the hostages the 9 U.S. citizens that are still not with us. Liat Benin, Omer Nutra, Idan Alexander, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Sagi Dekelchen, Gadi and Judy Hagai, Keith Siegel, and my son, our son, Itai Chen. We urge you and the U.S. government to do whatever it can. Time is ticking, and it's not in our favor. Itai grew up as a dual citizen, both living in Israel and visiting family here in the United States, Plainview, Fair Lawn, New Jersey, Boston. And when he got to the age of 18, he joined the IDF, was also stationed at a base next to the Gaza border. Important to say, in protection mode, protecting a sovereign part of the state of Israel that is not in some sort of international conflict, and was abducted and kidnapped on that Black Saturday. We had initial contact with him, but as the hours went by, we understood this wasn't a typical Saturday of some missiles flowing from one side to the other. We tried to get in contact with his team members, with other members that saw him, but contact was lost pretty soon. 9 a.m. in the morning was the last that we had any contact with him. Initially, we thought somehow he's been busy, he might, make it out. But after not hearing from him for 36 hours, we went to the headquarters of the police as a missing person and tried to figure out if the authorities have any clue about Itai. He was defined initially as missing in action, meaning nobody was able to identify him physically in the field. He was not in one of the hospitals, not in one of the deceased lists. That gave us some hope. Maybe he'll show up. After 4 days, Thursday morning, 6 a.m., we got a knock on the door. Just to explain to you what that is, you have on the other side 2 high-ranking Army officials. Believe me, you don't want your enemies to be able in that situation where you understand you do not want to open that door. But you also understand that there's no other choice but to open that door where your heart is going 200 miles an hour. We here today are sitting as the lucky ones that got the notification from the IDF is that he was abducted, kidnapped by the Hamas terrorist organization. That's the lucky thing to get a notice. Ever since, we have no proof of life and no indication of his medical status. We just came today from the International Red Cross explaining to them that the way that they operate in discreet manner is not the way that we expect them to operate in this case. They need to be vocal. They are the witnesses. They are the ones that see the hostages going out. They are the ones that need to be vocal and get the international community behind them. And explaining to the Hamas, they need to know and understand this is not acceptable by the international community. They crossed the red line by not providing medical attention or by allowing any type of visitation. And we urge the international community, this is not a U.S. issue. It's an international community humanitarian issue that all of the international community needs to get behind in order to solve this problem. We'd like to thank the Biden administration, the Qatar government for putting in place this deal This gives us hope. On one hand, we are happy for our family members, such as the Naftali family, for being whole again as much as possible. But there's also more work to be done. And we urge President Biden, the international community, to do what it can to get as many hostages out as soon as possible. The interdiction of the Hamas, that could wait for another day, for another hour. First, hostages out, then we deal with Hamas. And it's an important distinction that we, the families, want to convey here as well. To summarize, we live in a different universe than you do. It's difficult to explain, but all of us now are family members to this different universe that we live in. And we need you to do whatever you can. Holiday season is here. Unfortunately, we celebrated Thanksgiving with an empty chair in our table. We want to be whole again with our families. God bless America. God bless you. And hopefully we could be whole again and go back to our previous lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruby and Hagit. We now recognize Liz Hirsch-Naftali.
How's that? Okay. Oh, now it's too long. Abigail came home 3 days ago, but Abigail did not come home to her house. Abigail did not come home to her parents. Abigail came back to Israel, and we are blessed by the miracle of her coming home to Israel. But when she got home, her parents, who were both murdered on October 7th by Hamas terrorists, were not there to greet her. On October 7th, her mother was gunned down by Hamas terrorists in their home. Her brother, Michael, her sister, Amalia, were both there. They went outside where their father, Roy, was with Abigail, who was 3. They started to run. A Hamas terrorist gunned him down and killed him. And he fell on Abigail, covering her. The 6 and 10-year-old ran. They thought Abigail also had been murdered. They locked themselves in a closet for 14 hours. Those 14 hours, we had 2 people reporting to us. They were a 6 and 10-year-old about what happened on the kibbutz that day. Their grandmother, who was also from this kibbutz Kfar Aza, was in Bulgaria on a trip with the kibbutz. She called her grandchildren, a 6 and a 10-year-old in a closet. It was dark. And she said, "Why is it dark?" Because she knew it was daytime. And it was a beautiful day. And they said, "Because there are Hamas terrorists here and they have just killed our parents and Abigail." She made them get out of the closet to show her from thousands of miles away the body of her daughter killed. Then they locked themselves in where they stayed for 14 hours until they were able to be secured with other relatives on the kibbutz, where most people stayed for over 30 hours before they could actually be taken from this kibbutz because there was so many terrorists. Abigail managed to crawl out from under her father's body, but we did not learn this for 3 days because there was no opportunity for us to understand. She crawled out from underneath her father's body with this blood all over her and went to a neighbor who she knew. The youngest child in this family had goes to Ghana with her to nursery school. They took her in, they locked her in the safe room, this mother and her 3 children, and the father, he went outside to protect the kibbutz. He was injured and did not come back. What we learned a few days later was that a witness had seen a mother and children being taken from the kibbutz by Hamas terrorists. That was it. 50 days. We did not know anything about Abigail's whereabouts. We did not know anything about this mother Hagar and her 3 children. We didn't know if they were together. We prayed that a 3-year-old was not alone, but was with a woman, a mother who she knew. 50 days. Now, we are blessed because Abigail came home to Israel 3 days ago. But when she arrived and she had no parents, she was dark, she had no light. Her aunt and her grandmother went to meet her. She was thin, she was hungry. I won't even go into more description, but she had been somewhere in the dark for 50 days. The only blessing is that this woman, Hagar, had taken care of Abigail as though she were one of her own. When Abigail saw her siblings and her cousins, these young people coming to visit her in the hospital, she blossomed. The light came back. And every day we hope for Abigail to continue in this process. Think about it, a 6 and 10-year-old who have spent 50 days thinking they abandoned their sister, but if they had thought that she was alive and brought her to the closet, she would not have been there. What I'm trying to explain is the effects of this for the entire family. We think about Abigail. I also think about Michael and Amalia, a 6 and a 10-year-old carrying this in their hearts. The stories keep going on and on. We are blessed that Abigail is with her aunt, her uncle, her cousins, her sister, her brother, her grandparents. And some people might say, Liz, why are you still here? You won the lotto. Your relative is home with her family. But what has happened in the last 6 weeks, and many of you saw me 6 weeks ago, and all of you know this picture of Abigail. And 6 weeks ago, I put this picture of Abigail on my desk, and my daughter said, how can you look at that? It's so sad. This is my daughter, Noah. And I said, this is my strength. This is our hope. This is why we are doing what we are going to do for the next. I naively thought it wouldn't take this long. I thought, how long could this take? But what I'm here to say is these people who are here speaking about their American sons, the folks in Israel and around the world who are waiting for their loved ones to come back, we're now a family. We are here for each other. And I will continue, and Noah will continue, and our family in Israel will continue to support the return of Omer, Itai, Idan, and all of these young people. I also want to bring out that there are young women that we have to get out of there, because I will not say what is happening, but we all know what is happening to young women. They need to come out. We have other children, we have old people. We need to get them out, and I so appreciate all the work that everybody here is doing. And I can only add my words of, Abigail's the hope. We see that people are coming out. We need to keep them coming out. We need more to come out, and we need them to come out really soon. Because when I see those faces, and you all see those faces, after 52, 53 days, they can't stay there much longer. So I want to thank you for having us, and thank you for really making this your priority, and that we know that this is something everyone here agrees on. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz and Noah. Thank you for being here with the release. That you stay involved is so important. God bless you. As we proceed to questions, we'll begin with a further statement by Chairman Mike McCall, who has another commitment. But Chairman McCall, thank you.
No, thank you, Chairman. Liz, thank you for that powerful story and to all the families. I have a meeting with some ambassadors from the Middle East to talk about this issue, among others, and we will not rest. This committee will not rest until we get your loved ones home and get our Americans home. And as the mother of the hostage told me, lightness will defeat the darkness, as you mentioned. Abigail was in darkness, and now she's in light. And that is my great hope. And as Moses said, let my people go. Let my people go. So, shalom. I will see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And we now will proceed with questions from And we'll be proceeding with questions from the members who are here. It's so impressive. And now, if Adi would like to say something,
sure.
please.
Chairman Wilson, thank you for having us here. Just want to say a few words about our son. He grew up in Maryland, actually. We kind of locals. All my kids grew up in the States, and he graduated high school last year, 19 years old. Decided to volunteer to the IDF to do a noble thing, actually, to protect the residential areas, to protect the kibbutz. And his base was bombarded. He was attacked. He was surrounded by 20 terrorists. He tried to conduct the long-range fight with them, but there was too many. And ironic thing that the name of the base is White House. So the White House is an art gallery. It's an old Turkish building next to Kibbutz Nir Oz, and it's a small post actually next to this art gallery protecting the Nir Oz. And Ronan's son, Omer, actually was part of that base as well. So few soldiers, they were dispatched into the border, and my son stayed at this post guarding the small base along with 2 non-combatants. And when the soldiers came back into the base, they discovered that 2 non-combatants were killed and he was missing. So they took him. So that's basically our story, or what happened on October 7th.
Thank you very much. And Yael, would you like to comment yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to say that I was in Tel Aviv October 7th. I was speaking with Idan October 6th at Shabbat dinner. We were doing FaceTime with all the family and saying hi. And I thought it's going to be like a regular Saturday for him. And at few minutes before 7 a.m. when he called me and he told me, Mom, we are getting a lot of bombs and it's like war here. I'm seeing stuff, like terrible stuff. I was so surprised that something like that could happen, you know. Everything seems like fine, you know. I'm thankful that I spoke with him before they took him. And that's it. I'm just hoping that he will come home to us. And yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, each of you are just so cherished by us and so appreciated by your courage of being here. We will now be proceeding with questions. And in lieu of questions for myself, just a statement, then I'll give more time to our colleagues who are here. But I want to, and we'll begin with Councilwoman Manning in a second. But I want to point out that I believe that indeed Chairman Mike McCall was correct. We need to stand together to eliminate and defeat Hamas, the puppets of Iran, for the people of Israel. But it's also for the people of Gaza. It's for the people of the West Bank. It's not just for just some specific. It's broad. We know it's for the people of the United States. It's people for across Europe, Asia, and South America who have been kidnapped and are being held. And indeed, the Kin family is correct. It's an international community is what's being faced and being challenged. And to me, sadly, the world is in a conflict we didn't choose. And it's a conflict between dictators, rule of gun, invading democracies with rule of law. It began on February 24, 2022, with the invasion of Ukraine by war criminal Putin. And then it proceeded to October 7th with the invasion of Israel, ironically, on Putin's birthday. And we've just got to take this so seriously that indeed, in Iran, they chant sadly, for the people of the world, but it is very clear, and it's death to America, death to Israel. And I was just last week in Yerevan, Armenia, meeting with the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, and I was explained to, we had delegations from 50 countries, that it may be Israel and America now, but it's them ultimately. It's the world, international community. So we must be together. And that's why it's so inspiring to see Democrats and Republicans working together, because we do understand this. And I now refer to Congresswoman Kathy Manning of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out something that has become apparent as we have listened to each of you tell your story, and that is that none of your sons had to be there. All of your sons were Americans who could have chosen to stay in their safe, comfortable homes right here in America. But they know the story of the Jewish people. They know that our 2,000-year history has made it so critically important that we have one country in the world that will always take in Jews when they are persecuted in times of stress. And I think it's particularly important to note that each of your sons chose to do their part to secure a Jewish homeland at a time when we have rising anti-Semitism, when we have anti-Semitism around the globe and anti-Semitism in this country, unlike anything we have ever seen before. And since October 7th, prior to October 7th, our anti-Semitism in this country was at a crisis level. Since October 7th, we have seen anti-Semitic violent incidents rise by 400%, and we are now at a catastrophe. So I just want to mention how grateful I am to each of your sons that they chose to take this noble route to secure a Jewish homeland so that Jews will have someplace, a safe haven to protect them no matter what happens in the future. The only question I have to ask you is, what more can we be doing? What more can the Israeli government be doing to make sure that we achieve our goal, which is to bring back all of the hostages safely? It's a tough question because we feel like we're doing everything we can, but if there are things you are asking us to do, please tell us.
So as I said, we came from the International Red Cross. Keep the pressure on them. They need to be vocal and say to everybody what is happening. That is A. B, also, the people of the United States need also to convey the message to the government of Israel that they believe, U.S. people believe, that this is the #1 topic on the agenda for them as well, and to keep the Israeli government focused on this topic, release of hostages, before anything else.
You just can't stop. Time is of essence. We try to illustrate it here. There are wounded young people, there are elderly. It doesn't matter whether they're soldiers or civilians. As far as we're concerned, there are kids, there are our kids, they need to come home. And this has to be on top of mind. It has to be discussed. It has to be in the public eye, in the international community. Everybody has to shout, these kids, these families must be reunited, and the sooner the better.
Keep the pressure on Qatar, keep the pressure on Egypt, rally the international community to use any resources they have on this. Get this done.
Thank you, Congresswoman Manning. And we now proceed to Congressman Darrell Issa of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the advantages of my age is that when someone says never again and never remember and never forget, I think to October 7th as the 50 years since the sneak attack in the Yom Kippur War. It's no accident. It's no accident that 54 days later, the terrorists are still holding hostages that they took specifically to give themselves leverage. I think it's no doubt for any of us that it was only through the United States supporting its ally Israel and Israel's aggressive action that brought the pressure that has brought some home. And so, although I heard the answer to the last question and I completely empathize with it, I have to say, isn't it, and it's a question, don't we need to do both? Don't we need to continue our unity and our pressure and a willingness to fight as though there is no negotiation and negotiate as if there is no fighting if we're going to secure the release of these hostages alive and ultimately bring a peace to Israel, a peace that Egypt, Jordan, Sudan, Bahrain, Morocco, and UAE have signed, and Saudi Arabia was negotiating, that the Iranian terrorist backing Hamas want to derail. And so I ask that as the toughest question to ask a family, is there something you want us to do other than do both? Do all of the above. Never forget. Never give up on the force it takes to pressure them to release the hostages. Never quit negotiating. And never forget that this cannot be allowed to happen again 50 years later by the act of these terrorists. So that's a hard question to ask you, and I'm asking almost the mirror of the last question. Don't we have to do both?
I just want to humbly remind everyone here that we're not politicians or military strategists, and we really trust you to get that work done. All we can do is continue to tell our stories and continue to carry this pain and ask you to keep doing everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's what I'm suggesting, is that everything we've done, the unity that we've shown in Congress and with an administration, the pushback on Iran's policies of spreading around the world false narratives, it seems that we have to do all of that. But I in a sense, as we go forward with what might be many more days or weeks before all the hostages are freed, and months or even longer before Hamas is eliminated from all of the world, but particularly from Gaza, you know, I want to hear it, because I so much want to be supportive of what you, as citizens of Israel and suffering family, want, because your priorities should be our priorities.
Congressman Issa, I will keep going on. We are here for these hostages. That should be everyone's priority. And I have spent 6 weeks coming to the Hill and speaking with people, leaders on both sides, people who unanimously say the number one priority is to release these hostages. The people here today are also Americans. So they come to you as American, parents of Americans. They come to you as supporters and parents of Israelis. But the one thing that we have all understood is that we can't answer your question how we want to, in the sense that we individually can, but we're here representing hostages. We are representing lives, and we don't have the answers. But what we're here to do is tell the stories and have you continue to tell these stories, please, and bring us back until they are home so that no one is resting, which we don't think anyone is. But when you ask that question, we all are fixers, but we can't fix this. But what we're all here is these people, because they are the parents, their sons, who could be my son, are somewhere in the dark in Gaza. So what I think is the guiding light here is that we need to get these hostages out. We need to bring these people home to their loved ones. And I actually believe that that is the way we move forward in the region. That is the way we move forward in terms of how we treat each other. But until these hostages come back, all the other conversations that you all need to have, we can't join them. And I thank you for your leadership. And I thank you, but we implore you to keep that pressure going so that their sons, who could be my son, will be home really soon.
then I will, in the alternative, give you my pledge that I, as one member of Congress, will push to make sure that the Congress never quits until every hostage is returned home. Thank you for your stories.
Thank you very much, Congressman Issa, and I want to commend Congressman Issa. His heritage is from the Middle East, and I still cherish going on my first Codel throughout the Persian Gulf states and Arab countries, where I found out, despite the media coverage, that people didn't want to live in the 14th century. They were doing quite well with skyscrapers in the 21st century. And so that's the civilization we want to see in the Middle East. So thank you. We will now conclude, actually, with Congressman Snyder due to time constraints, and then... Oh, here. And as we conclude, I'd like to have everyone reassemble behind the table for a picture with members of Congress and our very cherished guest.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. And I want to express my sorrow for all of the parents and family members who are going through this situation, and want you to know that I share your concern that the release of hostages should be the #1 priority. I know that you aren't here to be political or to take sides one way or another on politics. I have been critical of the Netanyahu government because I feel as though they were not prioritizing the release of hostages for the first month or so. I don't expect any comments on that, just to let you know. I am on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but not on this subcommittee, but wanted to come here because, first, to pay my respects and to let you know the entire Congress has the hostages on their minds, but also to let you know that we're going to stay on, and that we have, all of us unanimously, I believe, called for the release of hostages and demanded that Hamas release the hostages. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Congressman Castro. And again, we're just so grateful for your courage being here. And we want to thank the valued guests who are here. I want to thank the members of Congress who are here. You can see it's heartfelt by Republicans and Democrats to stand with you and stand for the release of the hostages kidnapped so mercilessly. As we now proceed, we are conclude. Here. And indeed, you go see, Republicans and Democrats are really united in our love and affection for each of you. With that, we conclude and with a brief picture. Thank you.